Lauren Southern joins me now, and the unrepentant Andrew Wilson, host of The Crucible, is standing by with an alternative view. So in your memoir, This Is Not Real Life, you detail these 3 acts in detail. And you start the memoir by saying your journey is that of a reverse hit. That you want to explore what happens when one wakes up from the ideological slumber. Just explain that.
Sure, I'm being a bit facetious when I call it a reverse Hitler. I don't really consider myself alt-right, not at any point in my life. However, I've certainly had more hardline beliefs when I was younger. I went viral at 19, and it's very easy to be certain about the world and how people should live their lives when you haven't actually lived it. And that's a very popular formula to get lots of accolades online because people want simple solutions. They don't want to actually have to look inward. They don't want to have to go through the complicated aspects of life where things don't always have a simple ABCD solution. We want to know it's either all women that are at fault for the problems with their dating life or all men that are at fault for the problems with their dating life. And that if you just follow a certain code, a radical ideology, everything will go perfect. But that's not how reality works. And I certainly learned that firsthand.
So I've got Andrew Wilson from The Crucible here. You're going to listen to a bit of this, Andrew, then give your view, and we'll put you both together.
You know, it's not often people have their 19-year-old thoughts immortalized on the internet. It's not that I was wrong about everything. Of course, there are men who are actually, of course, certainly in the era of woke, there were a lot of men just being demonized for no reason, for making jokes. I don't disagree with every opinion I had, but I don't think that going to these talks and having debates with people who are not prepared to talk about these issues, who are clearly, in some cases, you know, you're running around naked in the street to protest something. You may not be in the best state of mind. This is not the intellectual discourse that's going to solve anything. It's clickbait. And that really was the beginning of these quick on the street, 10-second clips of catch someone in their worst moment and we'll claim this is what all women are like. We'll claim this is what all men are like. I don't think that's productive to discourse. And I think it's really destroyed the online culture.
You wrote in the book, I wasn't a Nazi, though I can't deny that the constant stream of internet messages praising me for embodying that identity created a disorienting, dreamlike state around the concept. Nazism became less of a historic reality and more of an abstract movie-like aesthetic and joke.
For sure.
But that's a pretty devastating thing to admit, isn't it? That you found Nazism a joke and a kind of movie-like aesthetic, not reality, because the reality is so completely horrendous.
Well, I think when you've grown up on the internet, which I did, I've been on computers since I was 3 years old, everything becomes a bit distant. Reality is always put through this deep fry of online culture. And you see this with people who have the hammer and sickle in their bios on Twitter that are LARPing as communists. Do you think that they would fare very well in Soviet Russia? Half of them would probably be in the camps. This is when you're 19, when you're 20, these ideologies are, it is funny. It's used as a form of humor. It's used as a form to LARP and an aesthetic. I don't know what else to tell you. This is not the mind, a fully developed mind that has integrated and really felt the world. All of it is too far away from me when I'm that age to take seriously. Not great, not saying that's an awesome thing, but that is the reality of the online discourse right now and the one that I was a part of.
When you were 22, you stepped away from the internet to marry and pursue a life as a trad wife, traditional housewife. And you write about this, I genuinely wanted to live up to the ideals I championed publicly, the moral person, the defender of family. I wanted to become that person. I clung to the belief that even if I stumbled on the path, I could still get this part right. If there was one thing I could redeem, one role I could succeed in, it had to be this. I thought that if I could just be successful at marriage, it would fix me. But that idea was a recipe for disaster from the start. And sure enough, your fears became justified. The marriage ended in a very bitter breakup. What did you learn through that period of your life?
Well, first of all, I entered the conservative media space thinking that it was something that it wasn't. And I lived a life that wasn't traditional. I lived a life that wasn't preparing me for a real marriage. It was a lot of stress and rock and roll in the conservative space. But that's something I learned along the way, is that a lot of this is performative, as well as the trad life stuff you see online. I went, and when I was married, it was not a healthy situation, but I was sitting and posting on Instagram pies that I was baking, saying I've never been happier, because that's what I wanted reality to be. And that's how I wanted other people to think about me. And I think we forget that people are doing this on a political level as well. We know everyone's editing their photos on Instagram. We know everyone's doing certain poses to look a certain way, but people are politically posing themselves to be of ideological sects, whether it be Christian, because you get a lot of money and accolades for doing that, or, a communist, and they're not living these ways. They're living in mansions. If they're an activist for Greenpeace, they're flying in private jets. This is just another aspect of that is going on in the right-wing sphere, is the trad life LARPing. And I did that. I was essentially, not intentionally, I was lying to my audience about what reality was, because that's what I wanted it to be, because I didn't want to be a proof of concept gone wrong for the ideology I had promoted for 10 plus years and essentially ruined my life for, got banned from countries for, arrested, questioned under the Terrorism Act. I didn't want me to be a proof of concept gone wrong, the same as detransitioners get kicked out of the left because they're proof of concept gone wrong, right? We ignore the people who fail these things because we want simple solutions and ideologies that always work, but that is not real life.
You conclude the book by saying, I truly believe our minds are being sold to the highest bidder and that politics isn't the path to real change that many believe it is. Technology is being wielded to distort our perception of reality. And in the end, it doesn't matter if our digitally curated governments are red or blue, they have no souls. Andrew, let me bring you in here. I mean, you've been listening to what Lauren's been saying. What do you make of it?
Well, there's some truth to it, and there's some things that have no truth to it at all. The first thing that I would say is I agree to some extent with what she's saying about, maybe 19-year-olds being political activists isn't the best idea. But for Southern, the big problem that she has a credibility issue, and the credibility issue is self-imposed. It's not a credibility issue due to external factors that happened to her. It's credibility issues due to the actions that she herself took. So the idea here is, like, first of all, you don't actually have any evidence for the position. It's all anecdotal. It's nothing more than just kind of vibe. She's just vibing it out. But it's like, where's the actual evidence for this? I have a completely different aspect in media and a completely different experience than you had. But I also wasn't doing I wasn't having all this. I wasn't doing all that. And so it's like, that's definitely going to mesh out a totally different experience for you than it would for me. So why should we believe? I guess my position reduced is, I don't think that the right pushed you out because you weren't good enough. I think that the right pushed you out because of decisions that you made, which led to a credibility problem, and that most of this is just cope.
Lauren?
I'm not concerned. Yeah, I'm not concerned about the right pushing me out or the left not liking me. A whole lot of people don't like me for various reasons, but I don't think this has much to do with my good or bad decisions. I've lived a very strange life. Analyzing my relationships as any sort of thing that could be imposed on the wider population just doesn't make sense at all. Most people don't have a Wikipedia page that labels them a Nazi or a white supremacist. Most people haven't been banned from a variety of countries or had feds show up at their door trying to convince them to be, an asset. This is not a normal life. But when I do look at the average life of people around me, they are struggling to impose trad ideals. It's something they may want, but they simply can't have the stay-at-home housewife when the economy is the way it is. Just let me finish, Andrew. And it's not even what most people want. 75% of men say they want a working woman in their life. Men who get married older and women who get married older tend to have more successful relationships. Higher educated families tend to be less likely to divorce. A lot of the stuff that the trad life is advocating simply does not play out in positive results, born in the data or in what I'm seeing around me.
Yeah, but this is really elusive, right? And you use ambiguous language and equivocation here a bit. Let's start with this. What is trad exactly? What even is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. If you look at the online world, I think it's this assumption that you have the man go to work, you have the woman stay home, she's having the children, you get married very young, you stay a virgin until marriage, you don't go to university, you kind of go into the trade. Certainly women don't get educated. There's just this idea that we go back to the 50s, which I think is it's just fantasy. It's fantasy.
Who's advocating? Well, tell me who's advocating for these things, because that's not the advocation that I ever see when it comes from traditionalists. What traditionalists seem to always be Hang on. I'm sorry too. I didn't cut you off. I just let you finish. What I see advocated from traditionalists is something completely different. They're trying to epitomize a value structure, not necessarily a lifestyle structure. Not saying that moms can't go have jobs. They're saying that they need that a wife is supposed to prioritize all of her family before herself and the husband too. It's a self-sacrificial system based on a hierarchy, and mostly a church hierarchy. Those are the advocations of the values that I see, not a go back to the nuclear family 1950s. We've been past that for an awful long time. So I don't actually even know, like, who are these people that you're referencing here specifically? Who are these specific people who are saying this, we want to go back to the 50s, women aren't allowed to work, right? Who's saying it?
Well, I'll tell you one who's saying it, actually, Andrew Tate. Now, you say, because he says it brazenly, that's exactly what he wants to do. He wants to take women back to the 50s. He wants them to stay at home, not be allowed to work, not be allowed to vote.
But Andrew Tate's not a traditionalist at all. He's the opposite.
No, but he's advocating for a return to the kind of dark ages for women where they have absolutely no right to talk.
Maybe, but he's not a traditionalist. Southern's talking specifically about traditionalists. And I'm asking her the specific question. Who are these traditionalists specifically who are making these advocations that a mom who has children at home can't have a part-time job, but rather, hey, it's probably good to avoid babysitting fees, things like this, to have one parent who stays at home, one parent who works, if it's possible, to prioritize their children. That seems completely rational, reasonable to me. Who's advocating this throwback to the 1950s specifically?
I think that's great that you don't have these views, Andrew. And I would agree with you that the average normal traditionalist living in the real world does not possess these beliefs.
That's not answering my question.
Online, I'm about to answer your question. As Piers noted, the LARPers online, like Andrew Tate, the people who are posting Norman Rockwell photos and saying base. He's not. He's LARPing, as I've been LARPing.
He's not LARPing as a traditionalist
there are so many people.
Either.
When 10 years ago, I had to make a video explaining why I wasn't married because I was getting so much pressure in my comments section saying, why aren't you married at 21 years old, Lauren? This is not a random phenomenon that I'm making up. You can go watch it. It has over 1 million views because there was so much curiosity in why I wasn't married at that age because I was a part of this right-wing community and not all of it's bad, but there's a lot of LARPers. I'm not giving you names. Who are the names of these people specifically?
The name one.
I'm saying they're LARPers. They're LARPers, like Andrew Tate.
Who is the LARPer? Andrew Tate's not a traditionalist. Who are the traditionalists specifically who are advocating these things? I think you built an entire
You don't think there's anyone online that's advocating.
Name them.
Okay. When I grew up, I listened to Prager University, which said you shouldn't go to university. You shouldn't. You should get married younger. You shouldn't bother getting educated. These are all. I just said Prager University videos that I watched when I was younger in the right-wing sphere.
University? Who?
Dennis Prager himself.
Dennis Prager himself not make an advocation to go back to the 1950s. Ridiculous.
The idea that there isn't a general sentiment that you shouldn't go to university, that you should get married young, that women should be at home having babies on the right. It's just the most absurd thing I've ever seen. You can look at like the red-headed libertarian and all these people saying women shouldn't vote. If you watch a Timcast episode, there's plenty of influencers on there saying we need to go back. We need to return to tradition. I can't believe you're even I've named like 4 people here.
Who? Name one.
I just said red-headed libertarian when she goes on Timcast. She's talking all about how women shouldn't vote.
Red-headed libertarian may think that the 19th Amendment needs to be repealed for external reasons. I don't know exactly what her reasons would be, but that would have nothing to do.
I have nothing against these people either.
That would have
the idea that there isn't this advocacy going on the internet is absurd.
That has nothing to do with the position that these are traditionalists who are saying we need to move back to the 1950s and wives can't work, and that's ridiculous. I've never heard this inside of any of these circles.
You've never heard the argument. You've never heard the argument that, hey, women coming into the workforce ruins society. We need to repeal the 19th. We need to get rid of.
These are mass oversimplifications.
You've never heard this on the internet. Here's what I hear.
I'm going to tell you that what you're doing is oversimplifying complex issues, which people are prone to do. So the oversimplification
on the internet,
isn't that traditionalists are saying women came into the workforce and ruined it? They make arguments based around the fact that wages necessarily increase if you inflate the workforce. And that's true, right? That's just objectively a fact. And so they point this out and point out that if there's a reduction in the workforce, people have much better ways to collectively bargain. Even Democrats used to know that that was true. Right? What you're doing is you're oversimplifying it by completely building a straw man around what you consider traditionalism to be. and then you attack that. But when I ask you to specifically name the people who are creating these advocations in your overly simplistic way, you can't, because there aren't any.
Okay,
The
that's a
redheaded
fair point.
libertarian.
That's a fair point. But Andrew, let's take the manosphere and the likes of Andrew Tate, because, and there's always guys, because they do have a very fixed view about a woman's place in the world, and they do have a very large audience that they pump into of predominantly young men, right? And I think it's an incredibly unhealthy influence that they wield. And, you know, Lauren says in her book, I believe change is possible. I believe in redemption for Andrew Tate, but understanding why people do what they do and hoping for their greater spiritual good doesn't mean they shouldn't be stopped. And the reality is you can't stop people like Andrew Tate if they don't want to be stopped, unless he gets incarcerated, which he may well be. But in terms of his views pumped out to his millions of followers, that shouldn't have a vote, shouldn't have a job, should stay at home, all the things Lauren was saying, and let's put aside the traditional, the trad part of this, and talk about a modern bastardization of trad, if you like, in the face of people like Tate. Mm-hmm. What do we do about that? As a society, what do we do about people like Andrew Tate, who I think are brazen misogynists?
Yeah, I mean, the phenomenon of Tate came about specifically because there's an overcorrection to over-feminization of various things in culture. And Tate was one of the guys who came out and was like, no, all things masculine are actually good, and this kind of thing. Now, I don't have any large advocacy for Tate's message. I believe much of it is degenerate, and I've said so publicly. There's not a lot you can do about it, though, until you stop demonizing masculinity in every single sphere which exists, and that is actually happening. You can say, no, that's just part of some culture war thing, but it's actually not. You actually do see this in society in general terms, and I can give you examples of it. Now, as far as is concerned, you're talking about two distinct ideologies which are coming together. The Fuentes ideology is focusing on everything from a religious Catholic lens. Within the purview of his lens, it's hierarchical. And so it's not that women have less ontological values. That's just that within the hierarchy of family, the man's going to be the Christ head, and the woman who's the wife is going to be subservient to the Christ head. That's the way that it operates within his view. That's consistent with his view. Now, that's consistent with most Catholic views, in fact. Now, Lauren's right in a sense that when that's applied, it's very tough, but the church promises you that it's going to be. It's really going to be a tough thing to submit to your husband. It's really going to be a tough thing for the man to submit to the church. The church assures you that this is going to be the case. They assure you of it. So it's not like you don't know that it's your cross to bear, that this is going to be really tough. It is really tough. And I've never heard anybody BS about that it's real tough to be a Christian. It sure is.
Lauren, you were brought up in a very evangelical household. So what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, you know, young people like me who grew up evangelical tend to run from it because as soon as it's hit with the real world, you know, a lot of our ideology falls apart since we were sheltered. We were sheltered from, oh my goodness, wait, you can lie, you can do these things. And especially when you have this kind of online performance of Christianity, when you meet these characters in real life and they don't actually live this way, it gets very confusing. And I think, you know, it's all well and good for Andrew to say, well, we just need to adhere to the church. And I agree. I think that would really help society. But most young people are not being raised religious. They're not being raised in homes that have morals and traditions. They are being raised on modern media. They're having sex before marriage. They're starting only. They're going off the path and they don't see a way back. And I think calling them irredeemable, going on things like the Whatever podcast or Fresh and Fit and calling them or which there's another one, Myron Gaines, one of these people promoting this very rigid belief of where women need to be in society. I don't think that's offering people a solution or a way back. You know, the problems of traditionalism are completely different now than they were 50 years ago. We have things like Tinder and Hinge now. How do we deal with that? There's way more optionality than Christians or anyone ever had in history. We need a different way to tackle this than just telling people return to tradition or go to the church, because they're not going to right now. The church needs to look like something that is enticing, not something that is judging them, something that offers forgiveness, not something that offers them eternal shame.
Andrew?
Yeah, it's funny. This is one of the more common criticisms that's out there, and it's completely false. The Christian ethicists that I'm aware of, including the ones who go on Whatever podcast like me, specifically talk about the ideas of redemption, the idea to move away from the ideas of sin, to move towards things which are no longer sinful. That is the pathway back. That's the whole point of Christian ethics, is that you're not irredeemable. You're not horrible ultimately. You are a person who can be redeemed. However, some people are ideologically captured. And when you become ideologically captured, it takes long amounts of conversations to convince you away from ideology, because it creates cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is very painful. But Christianity does offer these redemptions. I don't know where you get the idea that it doesn't. But pointing out that
I agree. I agree.
But pointing out, hang on, but pointing out that I don't think is problematic. They are indeed. Now, I think that calling women in a general sense is nonsensical and shouldn't be done just because you don't like how they live or whatever. And by the way, every woman online gets called by somebody. Doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if they're relational to Piers or it's you or it's it doesn't matter who it is. They're going to get called. That's just the way that it works online. And every guy's it doesn't matter who it is. That's how it operates. Okay. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but that's just part of media, right? People who are anonymous, they suddenly get very gutsy and ballsy and say all kinds of shit they're not supposed to say. But the point here is that there is an offerance of redemption that comes through these ethical systems. I don't know why you think that there isn't. There always has been. And I don't know why you think that for some reason, the whatever podcast hosting these ideologies for long form debates, which are 8+ hours most of the time, usually with people who are psychologists, women who are very, very well educated, who go on there to represent their worldviews, is somehow a negative to society when it's putting on display the very thing that you're talking about. What is the distinct ideology which is offering these very pathways? You seem to only be interested in the fact that, hey, the online culture's messed up. The online culture's always been messed up. It's never not been messed up. It's always going to be messed up because culture itself is screwy. Okay, it just is ultimately. But when you talk about these ideals, I think most of this is stemming from the fact that, like, look, most of the reason that you're in the situation, I read your book, at least most of it, and I watched your interview with Jeremy Boring.
Thank you.
Most of these things that are going on with you are because of you. Now, people have completely radically different experiences than you had. And just pointing out that, like, oh, the manosphere is a problem, Christian ethicists are a problem, things like this. But you can't even tell me specifically who. Like, Andrew Tate's not a traditionalist, and you know he's not a traditionalist. I don't even know why you brought him up.
I agree.
So who?
Well, Piers brought him up, but I'm saying it's people LARPing as wanting to return to tradition. It's people LARPing as wanting to save the West. This is my issue, is the LARP that is going on online. Myron Gaines, we're going to fix society by taking away rights. I think that it's akin to the people saying, defund the police. Not only is this just not going to happen unless society falls apart, it's like fantasy football ideologically. And I'm not sitting here and pretending I have a perfect life by any stretch. If you read my book, you'll know most of it is an analysis of my own poor thinking and poor decision-making.
Laura, where have you washed up in your life? I mean, how do you feel now as a woman about your place in society? Have you found love again? Are you going to get married again? Kids? I mean, what's your worldview now of that, for example?
I'm a lot less strict in my life about how I think it's supposed to look. I'm not delusional about the fact that I'm not an easy person to be with. As Andrew has pointed out, I've made a lot of poor decisions in my life. Not all of it because of my own fault, some of it, but going viral at 19 for being on the right wing, getting slandered as a white supremacist, banned from countries. I can't even rent places to this day unless it's from a friend or a friend. I can't get a mortgage. I have federal agents trying to turn me into an asset. Like, these are things most people can't handle. I'm actually dating a lovely conservative guy right now, so I'm healing that part of my life at the moment. We'll see where that goes, but it's not advocating that my life is the perfect model. I'm saying I made a lot of mistakes, and I made a lot of mistakes because I got sucked into the internet and the performance over what reality was. I was more interested in projecting a certain ideology and getting likes and accolades than actually living that and changing my own life. And I think that's the biggest problem with stuff like the Whatever podcast, Andrew, is it's an insult to the intelligence of the audience to pretend it's anything more than clip farming to humiliate these girls for entertainment and money. if you really care about someone, you take them off camera and you talk to them about their soul. You don't ask them, do you identify as a Christian on the internet? You ask them how their journey is off camera. You don't try to clip farm to humiliate them. That's a completely different thing than actually guiding people towards healthy lives.
But you also, if I may say, before you answer that, Andrew, I just want to say, in your book, you talk about the numerous times you allied with the far right in the UK, and you conclude the British, at least the ones I encountered, had a serious problem that ran deeper than mere alcoholism. It wasn't something I observed from a distance. I felt it, lived it. The closest I've come to defining it since was when I read Trappist monk Thomas Merton's autobiography. He described England as a vast and complicated charade, a place where most people were already morally dead, asphyxiated by the steam of their own strong yellow tea.
Sorry, Piers.
Wow. Wow. You know the moral of that? Stop hanging out with the far right. Andrew, conclude things for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a self-refuting prescription. It's like, look, I'm not telling everybody that they should follow me, but there is a serious problem here that's going on that people should be, following along with, so that they note the serious problem. It's like, it's still prescriptive. It's still, you're still trying to make it a society-wide basis. You never really did answer to me who these individuals are who are advocating these things, and how it's not just a straw man position that you completely built up in your head so that you can attack it publicly without ever giving anybody any actually real details about specifically who these people are, what it is that they're actually advocating for, what their positions actually are. It's just one.
Me, Andrew, I'm one of them. It's me. I was one of them.
Yeah, I know.
I went online and I told people how they should get married, how they should live their life, and I hadn't lived it. It's me, and it's the people that were around me, because I listened to people on the internet.
No, just you.
And guess what? I got very viral and famous, the same way Myron Gaines did, the same way Andrew Tate did, because LARPing as an influencer online doesn't even necessarily. Right,
Neither
but
of them
they're
are
advocating.
traditionalists.
Do you not say they say we need to return to traditional values, we need to return to the 50s? Not for them, of course. Not for them.
No,
they want to live their life how they want to live it.
The two people that you just noted, neither one of them are traditionalists by their own admission, right? And they're promiscuous as hell. They have no religious foundationalism whatsoever. What the hell are you talking about? You're talking about red pillars here, not traditionalists.
Yeah, and then there's trad influencers that are repeatedly coming out and saying, like Bernadine Beauty, that it didn't work for them. I can give you plenty of names, Andrew, but you won't listen, and you just...
What didn't work for them?